So, first time dog owner.
Yes, first time dog owner. Got him just a little over, it's been about, I guess, coming up on 2 months.
Okay.
And yeah, grew up, my family's always had a dog, so I've always been around dogs, and then yeah, he's my first one.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm really lucky because I've been able to take him. I still go to the office, but I work in a family business, and my dad has a dog, my aunt has a dog.
Oh,
so
sure.
it's really nice. We're able to bring him in, and
Sure.
it's helped with the, it just helps a lot, to have obviously being able to not have to put him in his crate, and we're able to do some training too, so.
Okay. Is there ever a time where you do like leave them maybe once a week or so at home?
No.
No?
Never. The most I'll leave him is like, if I'm going out for the night on the weekend, I'll leave him in the crate for, the most 3.5, 4 hours, that's never more than that.
Okay. And then he's got some like standard like sit, stay, paw type stuff.
Yes, so, yeah, I'm very lucky. My aunt, she does canine companions, where she teaches, she'll take in a seeing eye dog.
Sure.
And so I'm very lucky she's been able to help me get him to do sit, stay, paw. We've got to be able to leave, you put food down, you tell him leave it, and he'll leave it. Working on side and heel. He has side a little bit, but still get excited very quickly.
Sure. You doing this all with food?
Yes, all with food, and then just on the collar, giving him a little, yank when he's not doing what.
Okay. On his flat collar, do you have a prong or slit?
No, this is it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, one of my trainers here is doing a companion dog.
Okay. Yeah.
She's doing it. She's gonna be service dog. Her name's Tango. So golden lab mix.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, that's what she has too.
Canine companions. I have to ask her because I wonder if it's the same place. And then, what level of training are you trying to achieve here with your dog?
Well, I just noticed that he definitely is very, even just looking up, when I was researching the dog, the border collie mix, they said that they're always kind of looking for something to do, and they're very, he's definitely very curious and kind of he's not napping, we're not at the park, he kind of always wants something to do.
Sure.
So I definitely would like to get a good level of training, just kind of for his own sake. I feel like it'd be good for him.
Sure.
And then also, obviously, I'd like to work on walking on the leash, walking off the leash, all the basic commands.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you noticed anything behaviorally from this guy? Is he nervous out when you walk him out in a busy street? If he hears a loud noise, does he spook easily, or is he?
No, he's very curious. He definitely does not spook easily. He's very curious, so if he hears a loud noise, it'll almost be the opposite. He'll want to, he'll perk up and want to know exactly what it is.
Sure.
Loves squirrels, loves to try to go after squirrels.
Okay.
Loves other dogs, is super, super friendly. So always, wants to play with every dog he sees.
Okay.
In terms of how he is, he definitely is food. He's definitely food motivated for sure. He's definitely very stubborn though. He knows what he's not supposed to do. So he'll literally wait. You'll see him. I'll see him chewing on my sandal, for example.
Oh, sure.
He was doing that this morning. And I go up to him. I think no. He drops it, and understands. Goes in the corner and sits and looks at you. You're like no. He's like okay. Then you walk away, go in the shower and come back out. And of course, but as soon as he sees you seeing him, he will drop it and then walk back over and sorry.
Sure. Okay.
Other than that,
Okay. From what I can see here, he seems to have a good temperament. Like I said, he's curious. He's got a nice kind of, in this context, kind of docile demeanor. When I get other clients, their dogs, literally pulling them off the chair and stuff.
No, he doesn't have any of those issues.
Yeah, so that's good. So I think you have a good personality type here in terms of his temperament and everything. So before reaching out, did you research on how he trained and the methods that we use and everything?
A little bit, yeah. So you use the shock collar?
I use e-collar and prong collar, is correct.
Sure.
Yeah, so just making sure that we're aware of that, because sometimes people do book the consultation and blow past those things, and then they show up and they're like, you use what? It's literally the first thing you read.
Yeah, no, I saw that. And I remember that my parents, they live in the suburbs, and they booked a dog trainer, and it was something similar.
Yeah, okay. And that's what I was wondering too, previously.
My mom freaked out and was like,
Sure.
all this stuff. But I saw that and I'm like, that's just how, he would need that because he
stubborn and.
It's just stubborn. I mean, partially I'm sure he's a puppy, and also just because
Sure.
he's a male, he's a male dog. But
And how old is he again?
he'll be 9 months in
Yeah,
like a week. So
So yeah, no, he's at a good age to start. You can start as young as 6 months.
okay.
And I've trained dogs as old as like 12 years old, with e-collars, perfectly safe to use, and I'll explain everything to you. But yeah, at any age they can learn. I remember growing up, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, right?
Right.
And now I'm a dog trainer, and I'm like, man, so many of those myths and sayings just aren't true, yeah. So, so I use e-collar. Very rarely do I use prong collar.
Okay.
Because other trainers will tell you, first you start with food, then you work the prong collar, then you work the e-collar, right? And you can, but I'd rather just have a blank slate and jump straight at the e-collar.
Okay.
Okay, because what happens is if I do get a dog that was previously trained either with food or maybe with another e-collar and it just wasn't done correctly,
Right.
and then I come in, it's harder for me because the dog already has a concept, so I have to force mistakes in order to reteach them my style of e-collar.
Right.
So if they're a blank slate for the most part, then I'm like, great, the dog has no idea, very easy to work with, okay? I understand as a business, if you get the client to do 3 programs with you, it's obviously a lot more money.
Right.
But in my experience, 'cause I started as a solely food-only trainer
Okay.
10 years ago, and I realized very quickly he had a very low ceiling.
Right.
And I progressed then from food, I went to slip chain, to prong collar, to e-collar. So I know the entire spectrum.
Okay.
And when I work people with food and prong collar is definitely better, much better. But food only, people would give up. Just wouldn't work. Even for dogs that had no behavioral issues, they're just too distracted in a real environment that they're like, I don't care about those treats. I'd rather chase the squirrel right now.
Exactly, that's him. Indoors, his training's great, and then as soon as we get outside, it's
That's a problem.
all out
Yeah.
the window. Yeah.
Because, he's not meant to be in the home. He's not meant to look like that. He's meant to be like a coyote or a wolf or a dingo or whatever, right? We've taken these dogs or these animals throughout hundreds of years and made dogs. So he's, driven by instinct. He's meant to be out, hunting and peeing on stuff and mating and replicating and all that. So when you have a dog in the home for 23 hours out of a 24-hour day, that 1 hour can be very overstimulating. And he's like, yeah, forget, I can get that treat later on.
Right. Yeah.
I'll get that in the house.
Uh-huh.
But right now that squirrel is looking a lot of fun because I never get to see squirrels, right?
Yeah.
So that's how food works. A prong collar is much better, but then when you remove the leash, the dogs can learn when you don't have a leash, you don't have a means of making the behavior happen.
Yeah.
It also takes a lot more technical skill.
Okay.
And then people tend to lock up a lot. They always tend to be tense when they walk their dogs, and then it creates an issue when it comes to the prong collar.
Right.
Because the prong collar is negative pressure, so it's constantly doing this to the dog. The dog gets frustrated, and then there's a whole set of issues that come with that.
Definitely.
So the only time I use prong collar, for example, I had a client, she was like 90 pounds, and she had a 150-pound Great Dane.
Okay. Yeah.
So she had a prong and an e-collar, because
Right.
I had to give her as much leverage as possible because he was dog reactive.
Right.
So if she turned a corner and there was a dog,
Yeah.
she needed as much as possible to regain that control.
Definitely.
But other than that, I almost always train primarily using e-collar.
Okay.
The main reason is, one, out of all the methods that there are, in my opinion, it's the best method. Okay, because right off the bat you get off-leash reliability. Okay, so when I work with my clients, the methods that we're using are technically off-leash methods. It's just a matter of, is the owner going to practice to that degree?
Right.
Okay, so nothing changes, just whether or not they spend the time to advance their dog.
Right.
Nowadays we're at a press of a button. We got cell phones,
Right.
computers, cars are now press a button to start. Is that it's more logical, or it's more intuitive for an owner or a dog owner to press a button in order to train.
Yeah.
Okay, it's more natural to you now. Also, I can match the dog's personality type. So earlier, I had a blind pity that I just started for the first time. It was the first class, and his number was like 31 out of 127.
I see. Oh, okay.
Yeah, 31 out of 127. And I worked with other pitties that are 95 out of 127.
Uh-huh.
Very different personality types.
Right.
So it allows me to adjust the pressure according to the dog.
I see.
Okay, and according to the situation, because he was 31 here in a relatively bland environment outside of some dogs playing, but out in the real world, when you have squirrels,
Right.
rabbits, raccoons, and other dogs and people that coo at them,
Yeah.
you have more things to contend with. So you might find in your neighborhood, the number could be 25 and he's perfect, but then when you go to the park, it's 45.
Right.
Because now he's playing with other dogs and there's other things to override, okay? So, and it doesn't matter if I have the leash on or off, because that's what remote is meant for, okay? So when it comes down to like the length of time and the cost and stuff, it also comes down to like how much control is the owner wanting. Because I don't teach things that people aren't going to use.
Right.
You know, like most trainers have a program, you know, like, so let's say the owner is struggling with like reactivity. So then they're making them go through this program, and they need the reactivity to get done, right?
Yeah.
And then they're struggling with their dog until like 5 classes in, and I was like, now we're gonna talk about reactivity.
Right.
For me, it's if I can do it on the first, if not the second class, we're already delving into like, we gotta address these things, right? Because then it just makes it help for the owner.
Definitely.
Also, you don't have that issue.
Yeah, I know, like, exactly, I have no real, like, pressing issue. I just want to make sure, I just know he's young, I would love to, yeah, I feel like he wants structure, like I can tell.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, I mean, everyone wants a good dog,
Yeah.
I love going on hikes and, doing stuff outside with him, so I'd love if I could have him off leash, it'd be amazing.
Sure, and then the e-collar again is a tool that can guarantee control, even in the case of an emergency.
Right.
Okay. And I've had people come to me and say, like, Jesse, pay you whatever you want, just I want you to train my dog using food. Like, I'm not going to take your money because I know it's never going to happen.
Right.
And then you're going to come back asking for your money back.
So
unless you're into e-collar, that's not how it works, right?
Okay.
So it's perfectly safe to use. I've been using it for 10 years. I've built my career essentially solely using this tool. All the dogs that come to my facility for training are trained on the e-collar. The only exception are puppies under 6 months.
Under 6 months?
Under 6 months, because it's like kindergarten.
Right.
So I always tell the owners, don't worry about it, we'll do basic stuff right now, come back at 6 months, and then we'll do big boy, big girl training.
Right.
Okay, so yeah, he's at a really good age. Never too old, but nine months is perfectly fine. So, have you ever been to a chiropractor or physical therapist?
Yes.
You have you ever had stim?
Yes.
Okay, so that's an e-collar.
Okay.
Okay, so people usually think e-collar is like a taser or like they're electrocuting their dog. So it's electric but not electricity is typically how I explain it.
Yeah.
So if you press the button, there's no current going between, like where you see electricity going or anything like that. 2 probes. Did you actually, your parents do the training when you were growing up with that dog, or?
So, like kind of, yeah. But I was young at the time. She's
Sure.
13 now, so I really don't remember much of the training, honestly.
Sure. So the e-collar has 2 probes that make contact with the skin. And if only one probe is making contact, nothing happens.
Right.
Okay? So there has to be the 2 probes making contact in order for the dog to feel something. It's simply a muscle contraction.
I mean, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, older e-collars used to go to 8 or 10,
Okay.
and mine go to 127.
Okay.
So 10 and 127 are actually the same. I just have 117 more breaks.
I see.
Okay, so I can really fine tune it.
Uh-huh.
So those cheaper, older brands, you could be at 4, the dog's yelping, 3, the dog's not listening. So
I
then
see.
you're stuck.
Yeah.
Because you need like 3.5.
Uh-huh.
So we don't have to worry about that with the collars that I use because it's very nuanced.
Okay.
So when you went to the physical therapist or whatever, they would tell us when it becomes too much.
Right.
And they would raise the dial.
Yeah.
And then you say, oh, right there, and then say, okay, they go down, and they would let the machine do its work.
Yeah.
It's the same thing for dogs. We start low, we work our way up, okay? And I find the number that's appropriate to the dog in that given moment, okay? And I teach you all this stuff. I already know how to train dogs. I don't need to keep practicing.
Right.
And now because of COVID, got the mask on, all that stuff, it's all verbal instruction.
Right.
Okay, so I don't touch the dog. It's all you.
Okay.
Now I'm there present with you, but I'm coaching you through everything, so you're learning from ground zero.
Yeah.
So pre-COVID, I used to work with the dog in front of you. You would watch, and so you can get an idea of what we're trying to teach.
Right.
I would get some foundation down, I'd give the dog back to you, and then I would coach you, and then I would give you your homework. So it was nice because it gave the owners the visual, but now, since it's just verbal instruction, I know what I'm looking for, but you don't.
Right.
So the first class is typically the hardest. But once you get over the first class, everything else is pretty straightforward.
Right.
Okay. The positive of doing it yourself is nothing is related to me.
Right.
Everything's related to you, which was a con to me working with the dog prior,
Yeah.
because I had no problem going to 95 if needed, and the owner, without me telling them to, wouldn't. So now that people are kind of forced to do that themselves, it gets them over that psychological hump of going higher on the collar because they think they're hurting their dog.
Right.
And I tell them, like, well, you were, 90 below, dog wasn't doing anything.
Right, yeah.
And then once you hit 95, all of a sudden the dog's listening.
Mhm.
Like, that's what dictates the number. I don't want to go to 95, but what makes me an efficient and effective trainer is that I will.
Right.
And that's the most important thing, because if you're not willing to reinforce what you're needing or wanting, he learns that he doesn't have to do it.
Right.
And now your obedience is not reliable,
Mhm.
okay? So,
Which he'll do, he'll try to, I mean, he does it all the time.
Yeah,
He tries to walk over, you know what I mean, yeah, he's, of course, what you say, he's a wild, you know,
dogs don't think the way we do. Dog logic and human logic is very different.
Mhm.
And, he's opportunistic. So if he's like, oh, sure, like, if I can get away with chasing a squirrel and you have no means of like stopping me,
Right.
why not?
Of course, yeah. Yeah.
He doesn't think about like, oh, this is gonna make Dad terrified
Right,
that
no.
I'm running away, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So he's gonna do what makes him feel good and what's fun for him.
Totally.
So with the e-call, the way it typically starts is the first class is almost always the heel command,
Okay.
which is walking on the leash, right?
Mhm.
Now my style of heel is very strict. If I take one step, the dog takes one step. If I take 5 steps, the dog takes 5
I
steps.
see.
When I stop, the dog automatically sits. This is with a completely slack leash, and I don't care what the environment is,
Yeah.
okay? Especially if you're wanting off-leash level control, you have to have that tightness,
Yeah,
okay?
definitely.
Whenever there's a little bit of a window or a gap, that gap of like, well, the dog's next to me, but they're only like,
Uh-huh.
a foot and a half away. I'm like, yeah, but when they're off-leash, that foot and a half becomes 30 feet,
Oh, totally, yeah.
right? You have to have them glued to you in order to have that kind of reliability.
That's the issue I have. I got him to the heel, like where he'll come, I'll say heel, and he'll actually, he'll come and sit next to me.
Sure,
And I'll say, like, let's go,
sure.
and if I make it 3 steps before he's,
He's
you know
done.
what I mean? Yeah.
If you go to my YouTube channel, like I said, we've been recording everything,
Mhm.
and if you're curious as to how it works, I just tell people go to lesson 1, because
Okay.
it's labeled. It'll be like a Mookie lesson 1
Right.
heel, and then it's for every dog. So when my dog owners, if they like forgot something,
Mhm.
they go back to the video, look up their dogs,
That's nice.
and they can just click on that lesson that's specific to them.
That's very nice, yeah.
But then for those that are not sure, maybe they're kind of apprehensive, I go just look at the lesson 1.
Mhm.
It's very transparent. The only things that we edit out are like sometimes someone will cut through.
Right.
Like we had kids come up and just started screaming around this. We're like, well, this is not necessary, right? So
Right.
we'll cut that out.
Right.
But most part, it's uncut so that it's very transparent.
Mhm.
I don't sell people rainbows and treats and furry farts. It's like,
Right.
like I train for reality.
Mhm.
And in reality, dogs run away. Dogs get hit by cars.
Yeah,
Dogs chase squirrels, and or dogs run into a dog fight.
yeah,
Like those are the things that we're wanting to have absolute control without hesitation.
absolutely.
Okay. So the first thing we start with is heel. It's the foundation for everything. It's what teaches him how it turns on and how it turns off. So if you put a remote on a dog and you just tap or
Right.
press the nick button, what you'll see is they'll start to walk around. Okay, because they're trying to get away from the e-collar.
Right.
Because they don't know what it is.
Uh-huh.
So we never want the dog to move away from it. We just want them to move into it, meaning to the owner.
I see.
Okay, so we start with heel. So he learns pressure on, pressure off.
I see.
Pressure on when we need him to do something, pressure off once he complies.
I see.
You drive,
Yep.
been on the expressway?
Yeah.
Have you ever had someone really close to your rear end?
Oh, totally.
Right, and it makes you feel uncomfortable.
Uh-huh.
And you might speed up,
Mhm.
you might switch lanes, you might not do anything, or swerving,
Right.
or you might like hit the brakes, right?
Yeah.
It's garnering some kind of response because it makes you feel uncomfortable that they're so close to you.
Mhm.
That's what we call spatial pressure, okay? So there's different forms of it. Growing up, there was peer pressure,
Mhm.
okay? Here we have remote pressure. If you did prong, it'd be prong pressure, leash pressure, right? So there's a lot of different forms of it. It's just a level of discomfort to create a response,
Right.
okay? So when we're doing that, finding that number, right, trying to find what's your working number, we're trying to find at what point are you uncomfortable enough that you're thinking, how do I stop this?
Right.
Okay? Now, negative motivators, in my opinion, are some of the best motivators.
Mhm.
Okay? So like, making more money is a nice motivator, right? But then when the pandemic hit and my business was making no money
Right.
and I had bills to pay, that was a really big motivator. That was working 7 a.m. to midnight
Right.
days.
Absolutely,
Because I had no choice. I had to do that in order to keep
Right.
my business afloat, right? Same thing for dogs. It's negative. He doesn't want it to keep going. He wants to alter his behavior to stop it, okay? And we're not trying to make dogs roll or yelp or, scream or anything like that. But I do want him to think with a sense of urgency,
Right.
meaning it's important,
Definitely.
right? So the faster he wants to fix the problem, the more reliable your training is,
Definitely.
okay? So what dictates everything else is just, well, how much control you want, right? So the first class is almost always going to be heel. That's 2 classes, there's 2 halves to that. The third class is either stay or the recall, okay?
Right.
That's really dictated by how long the owner's program is, okay? Because if they're gonna do a longer program, then I have more time to teach everything. That's usually stay into recall.
Yeah.
If it's a shorter program, I jump right into the recall, so they have time to practice it.
When you say recall, that's,
Come and call.
okay, yeah, just make sure.
Come and called. And depending on the length of the program also determines, well, am I gonna get fully off-leash obedience?
Mhm.
Now, recall has to be off-leash reliable.
Right.
So what I teach you will get your dog there, it's just a matter of time to get them there,
Mhm.
okay? So heel is the one command that every dog learns the quickest, because most people walk their dog 3 times a day.
Right.
So you practice it 3 times a day.
Mhm.
Recall, however, usually takes people the longest, because if they don't live by the park, now they have to put their dog in a car,
Right.
drive to the park, and practice, but then they also have to practice with distractions. So if there's
Totally.
never any distractions around, where your dog's gonna be great in an empty environment,
Mhm.
but then add a dog or a squirrel, and all of a sudden your dog acts like he doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah, his routine is, like, I'm very lucky, I work next to a dog park.
Oh, nice, yeah.
In Evanston. So like, go to the dog park first thing in the morning for 30, 40 minutes. And then depending on the day, if it's a slower day, I'll eat lunch at my desk and then take him at lunch.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, like a walk at night.
Okay, cool, yes.
He's very active.
So, if you're practicing at least once a day on a regular basis,
Mhm.
it's gonna take you, perhaps a month,
Right.
maybe 2 to get them fully off-leash reliable with the recall.
I'm lucky, but I'm able to do it in the office.
Yeah, right.
We do a lot of training in the office, I should mention that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, because you're gonna have that consistency,
Yeah.
otherwise, if it required you had to go somewhere, it would just
Totally, I mean, it's.
take a longer process.
Absolutely.
But I give you everything and I say practice,
Mhm.
okay?
That's great.
Um,
That's really what I'm looking for.
Good.
Because my aunt's been a great help, but she's not, she's not a professional.
Sure, yeah. And then the treats only get you so far.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, the treats have gotten us sit, stay, paw, but the heel's been a, what I mean? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and heel's usually the one command that people struggle with.
Mhm.
One, because in my opinion, most trainers, even if you go on the internet and try to watch, don't know how to teach it.
Okay.
Or the way that they're teaching is not that it doesn't work, it's just it's very complicated for the average dog owner to pick up on.
Mhm.
And my methods are stupid simple.
Perfect.
I call myself like a lazy man's dog trainer
Perfect.
because it's train as you live your life with your dog.
Uh-huh.
Okay, there's certain things that yes, you have to set aside some time, to like layer in the remote for like down or sit or whatever.
Right.
But once your dog knows how to do the command with the remote, now it's just apply it.
Right.
Applied dog training is the most effective dog training.
Mhm.
Because most people do 15-minute session and then expect their dog to like lay down at a restaurant patio.
Right.
I'm like, no, you have to apply it
Yeah.
at the restaurant patio, but you also have to have a means to make the dog comply.
Mhm.
Okay? So, it's fairly simple. Almost always by the end of the class, we get the result that we're wanting so that you leave going, cool,
Mhm.
that this is working.
Yeah.
So then people are motivated
Mhm.
because they see it actively working. So like, most of our videos are at Oz Park, which is,
Yeah, I live super very close to Oz Park.
gotcha, it's like the busiest park in Chicago.
Totally, yeah.
We got off-leash dogs, skateboarders, rollerbladers,
Mhm.
families throwing bar mitzvahs, there's a
Baseball
jazz
band.
band, there's baseball games,
Yeah.
there's lots of stuff, and there we are,
Mhm.
right? And we're getting the results in that environment, so it's very realistic.
Yeah.
So when the person goes home, they're like, oh, cool, like, this works.
Yeah.
Because I did it in Oz and not like an empty room at a, training center, which is
Exactly,
usually how it
right.
works.
Yeah.
Now, the weather is changing.
Mhm.
I do still train outside, but then I just tell people, like, you have to consider your dog because we're out there for an hour,
Right.
right? And in Oz Park, it's funny because once fall hit, like it went from super busy
Mhm.
to like
Yeah.
a handful of people being
Yeah, I was just
there.
walking around there yesterday. Even yesterday wasn't even that bad. It was still.
Sure, yeah, it's emptied out quite a bit,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, so I do train also here at my facility, and some of my clients are like, well, the concern would then be, is this gonna apply at home? And I go, yeah,
Mhm.
it's just your number may be different.
Right.
If it's 25 here, it could be 45 at home.
Right.
Right, everything stays the same, it's just what number is gonna make your dog listen. So, questions so far?
No, it's all, yeah, perfect.
Okay, so, in
Oh,
terms of,
the collar itself, is that something I do?
yeah, you get it on
yourself?
Amazon,
Okay.
Maria will send you a link, so,
Perfect.
how big are we expecting this guy to get? Because he doesn't look like he's gonna get much bigger.
No, this is it. He's 40 pounds right now, and the average, that's basically the average.
Okay,
Maybe, a couple more pounds, just, I don't know.
sure.
Although he exercises so much, and he really doesn't eat much, so.
Yeah, no,
I think this is probably about it, right?
he's a good size, typically dogs hit their height at 6 months, unless it's like a large breed,
Mhm.
and then at 6 months to a year, they're kind of filling out and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like no more than 45.
Mhm.
is you technically have two choices for the e-collar. One is meant for 35-pound dogs and under, and one is meant for 70 pounds and under. Okay, so he's just over by 5, but if he gets heavier, he could be up to 10 or whatever pounds heavier. Is the main difference is the output.
Okay.
On the 70-pound one, it's more, so there's more power, which would mean on the lower powered one, you'd have a higher number than on the higher powered one.
I see.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
In my opinion, I tell people opt for the one above, because you have to account for the thickness of his fur, so that it's going to act as a buffer.
Okay.
Also, he gets a little bit bigger, and also just, dogs are physical animals, they bite each other, and he could be very physically tough. He could be at 65, and he's just completely unfazed by it, So it's nice to know if you're at 65 or 70, you still have 50 levels or so.
Definitely.
Whereas on the smaller collar, you could be at 95 or something, and it's like, oh crap, I only have 20 more levels to kind of play with,
For sure.
And Maria would, of course, send you all this information. I've been using these collars for 10 years, the best brand in my opinion. They're a little bit on the pricier side. One runs about $237, the other one's $287 with tax.
Okay.
But they're fully waterproof. The higher powered one is a 3/4 mile range. The lower powered one is a half-mile range. Also plenty of range for the standard family pet. And then there's another brand that's very popular. I found it to be kind of inconsistent in my experience. So I just switched to Doctor, and ever since Doctor's always been like.
And is this something that he'll have for the rest of his life? Or is
Good question. It's like the most common question I get. In my book, when you need it, you have it.
I see.
Okay. The reason being is you can't account for life. So it's not that you're always using the remote to make him do stuff.
Right.
It's he's learned, right? But then let's say you go, I'm gonna take you to the dog park and I'm not gonna remote you because I don't have time, right? And you just go and you call him, and he's like, but there's nothing here, right? And then you'll hear stuff on the internet or read stuff on the internet that's like, oh, like the tools don't work because you have to have the tool in order for it to be effective. That goes with any method.
Right.
Like even with treats, people who do training with treats end up using treats for like the dog's life.
Totally.
But the problem is the treats don't work in certain contexts. With the e-collar, it doesn't matter what the context is, I can make it work.
He'll choose the squirrel over the tree.
Exactly.
I mean.
And the reason is, so with driving, on the expressway, do you go the speed limit? Right?
Mail all over, right?
Yeah. Most people don't go the speed limit.
Yeah.
But if you see a squad car, what happens?
Yeah, slow right down.
Right, so that's opportunistic behavior. The same thing with the dog.
Right.
So I tell people is the e-collar is like your cop on a collar. When it's present, your dog's gonna be more responsive, they're gonna behave themselves and stuff, and it's nothing good or bad, it's just the way of the world. It's not even humans, we know the laws, and we know we're not supposed to speed, but we still do it,
Yeah.
So I don't know why that people think their dogs are gonna do that if humans themselves don't do that. We're supposed to be like, the most intelligent species.
Right, yeah.
So all that means if he's a great dog inside the house, you don't need it. If he's a great dog, it's not your family business, you don't need it. But if you're gonna go for a walk and he's gonna be off leash, you need it.
Totally.
And the other thing is you can't account for life. There's been 2 times where I walk my dogs to Logan Square. My pit hates fireworks.
Okay.
Completely hates them. And I just have my dog on a leash and I'm walking, so I'm not thinking, and I'm like, it's August, who's gonna set off fireworks, right? Somebody set off fireworks twice. So then my pit's like flight mode, I wanna go home, and I was just like, man, I wish I had my e-collar because then I could calm her down.
Right.
I've had clients' dogs, they would be at the park off leash, someone sets off a random firework, dogs are running away now. So then if he has a flight response and tries to run away, it's not so much about obedience in that mode, because he's thinking, I don't know what that big loud bang was.
Yeah.
And I know earlier you said like he's like more so curious, but this is like a good example, is if it did spook him, and if you call him, he's like, screw you, man, take your dog for yourself. I don't know what that noise is. So it's essentially making him more afraid of running away from you than he is running away from the sound.
For sure, yeah.
Okay.
That makes total sense.
Yeah, and I had a client in Lincoln Park, their dog, they were walking him off leash, and they kind of turned around, and him and a coyote were nose to nose.
Holy shit.
Yeah, and then he did a recall, and his dog went and he came back to him. But he sent me a message, and he's like, man, because his wife hated the e-collar in the beginning. She was completely against it.
Yeah.
And he was just like, let's just do this, whatever, right? And then fast forward, she got over it, but then fast forward to that, he's like, man, we are so glad you did this training because we don't know what would have happened.
Sure, yeah.
And they didn't have a big dog. His dog was smaller than your dog, And I go, yeah, that's that crazy stuff that you're not planning for, but can happen. And I'd rather know, if he decides to like opt against the cue or the command,
Mhm.
I have a tool
Yep.
that I can force the return.
For sure.
Okay?
Mhm.
Does that make sense to you?
Yep, that makes total sense.
Good. So when it comes down to like the length of time and stuff, the way I look at it is I have 3, 6, 9, and 12-week programs. Okay, 3 is like the simplest. That's like people that have dogs that are reactive and they just want to fix the reactivity, and that's it. You're like in the 6 to 12-week round. Okay.
Yeah.
With the 6-week class, what you would expect to get is the heel, typically 2 classes, the recall, typically 2 classes, and the last 2, as long as everything's going well over here, which usually with the dog with no issues is pretty straightforward, then we can teach something like what I call place command, which is go here, don't move for a period of time. So if you want to take him to like a restaurant,
Right.
you bring a towel, pop it down, he goes there, he lays down, he doesn't move for 2 hours. Okay, that's like the trifecta of the family pet standard obedience stuff. So that's kind of like I walk my dog on a leash, I take him to the dog park, and he's off leash, and then I walk him back on leash back to my home type of stuff. Okay, the 9-week program is that, but we teach more duration commands. So that's more so in the realm of walk my dog, take him off leash to the dog park, take him to a restaurant.
Yeah.
And the 12-week program is I do off-leash hiking, I take my dog to the dog park, I take him to restaurants, my dog goes everywhere with me, and I want it on and off-leash, and I need full control.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's what dictates the length of time. Okay, I don't care what people do, I just go, if you're wanting full off-leash, you're probably not gonna get that in a shorter period of time.
Right.
Because there's a phase that we call proofing, where we teach all the behaviors, but we have to teach them that flight or running away is never an option.
Right.
And that takes time and practice, and then we have to use the remote to essentially force confusion or force him to go into flight mode
That's it.
to proof everything.
Uh-huh.
And that's the stuff that people miss when they only do like the shorter ones.
Right.
Okay, so it's completely up to you. I personally don't care. It's just a matter of like just how much control you're wanting.
Right.
Okay. Questions about that?
No, yeah, I remember when I was looking at it, I was looking at either the 9 or the 12, and I was still just kind of going back and forth.
Yeah. So you're right in that realm. And the off-leash heel is, the off-leash, the recall is always built to off-leash reliability. That has to happen, okay? But heel, sit, down, come, place, and all that stuff can technically be built up to off-leash reliability as well.
Mhm.
Okay, so it's a matter of, do I really need everything to be off-leash reliable, or just like the commands that matter, which would be heel and the come and call? So if you care about those 2 commands the most, then you're in the 9-week realm. But if you're like, no, I would like everything
Yeah.
to be off-leash reliable, then you're in the 12-week realm.
Okay.
Okay. In terms of like training and where we train, where we're doing odds in my facility depending on the weather, depending how the dog does, and also the client as well. And then I train rain, sleet, or snow for the most part. If you're choosing to train outside, I even have people training the cold vortex.
Uh-huh.
I'd rather not, but they have a husky and they're like, yeah, this is prime weather for our dog. And I'm like, all right, this sucks, but okay. But yeah, we like to use Oz as a nice outside environment, plenty of space to work with.
It's super easy for me. I live not even like a 10-minute walk from there.
Sure.
That's why when I saw that you guys did it at Oz, I was like, oh, this place would be really, this Strive's not hard for me either, but.
Sure, yeah.
Awesome.
It's nice because that's convenient.
Super easy,
Yeah. So that's something you would schedule with Maria,
Mm.
and then just let her know, Jesse told me about the choices, because now that before it was all Oz,
Right.
because it was great weather.
Mm.
But now that the fall's coming and it's colder because it's over by the lakefront,
Right.
we've been giving people options, and they've been opting to come over here. But if we get clients who have like he should be fine,
Mhm.
in that kind of weather because he's got a thicker coat,
Yeah.
then I personally don't care.
Mhm.
Okay, so she would get you situated with that.
Yeah, ideally I'd probably do both. I mean, just depending on the day.
Sure, yeah,
It's
it's
just
too bad out.
It's 40, so, okay, it's freezing, and just come here.
Yeah, for sure. So it's always an option for you. And then any other questions or any other concerns about the training or?
They're typically like an hour long, or how long?
About an hour, yeah. So if you do like a 9-week program, the way that works is Maria will schedule time with you. If you have a consistent time slot that works well for you
Right.
and it's available, she'll say, okay, that's your time.
Mhm.
So like, for example, let's say it's Sunday at 1.
Right.
Every Sunday at 1 for 9 weeks plus 1,
Mhm.
so 10 weeks total, is your time.
Mhm.
No one can take it from you,
Right.
okay? Now, let's say you have to reschedule, you get sick, or you go out of town or something like that,
Mhm.
and you have to reschedule 3 weeks or whatever. So at the 10th week, you still have classes left over.
I see.
But weekends and evenings are like my prime times. It's those times everybody you're trying to book.
Right.
So if Maria's like, hey, I got people that need that time, and you've already used up your priority, she'd go to book them, but then she'd come back to you and say like, look, you used up your priority, but you still have 2 classes, 3 classes left.
Yeah.
These are our other time slots. And then she just reschedules you.
Okay.
If it's during a day, like, Tuesday, like 11 a.m. or something, like nobody really books that, then chances are you end up keeping your time.
Yeah.
Because it's not a very demanded time frame.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, we do it that way, makes it easier.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, if you have like a rotating schedule or it changes, then what we do is we book you, but we don't to give you a time slot.
Right.
You just tell us, this is my availability,
Mm-hmm.
and she puts you in where we have openings.
Okay.
If you haven't had that kind of schedule, I may not see you for a couple weeks just because our schedules aren't lining up. Nothing bad, just gives you more time to practice.
Right.
Okay? And training is all about time frame.
Mm-hmm.
It's great when dogs learn very quickly. For me, I don't like it because the owner doesn't get the opportunity to work through problem areas.
Right.
Because life's not going to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Something's going to happen and he might be spooked or chasing after something. And it's like,
Sure.
how do I work through this problem?
Mm-hmm.
So I like it when dogs, make mistakes and they struggle because it helps the owner learn how to handle those things.
Definitely.
Not uncommon in the beginning for the dogs to look mopey or depressed because of the e-collar.
Right.
It's nobody likes discipline.
Mhm.
So like if I got spanked growing up, I didn't walk away smiling. It
Right.
sucks, right? So it's not uncommon, and e-collar can also pull out underlying issues
Okay.
because it's a stressor.
Right.
Okay, so like, let's say I've had clients in the past, dogs look completely fine, and then they start training, all of a sudden the dogs look anxious,
Mhm.
at least during the training and in the beginning process. And the owner's like, did the collar make my dog anxious? And I go, well, yes and no. I was like, your dog was actually already an anxious dog, he had just not been in a situation.
Like a stressor that.
Exactly, that brought that out. But after you work them through it and they get consistent exposure to it, it
Sure.
goes away.
Yeah.
Like I have a puppy at the first class, he started a couple weeks ago, he was shaking like crazy, like just like shaking, and it looked really bad. And I told the owner, don't worry about it, stick with it, practice every day, we'll see you in a week.
Mhm.
And by the second week, it was fine.
Right.
Okay?
I
Some dogs
mean,
take,
that makes total sense.
yeah, some dogs take a month or whatever, I don't know, but in the beginning, it's not uncommon to see that.
Mhm.
But we work through it, more exposure builds them up, and the next thing you know, they're fine. My dogs were the same way, they didn't like e-collar when they started, and then now they love it. When they hear it, they come running, because they know it means off leash.
Right.
It means, running around, chasing squirrels or whatever.
Mhm.
So at some point, they turn around, it's just whether or not the owner is being consistent with exposing them
Yeah.
to the collar, because
Mhm.
people tend to hold back, and then the dog doesn't get over it.
Yeah, I see.
So,
Definitely.
okay? Anything else?
No, that's really good.
Yeah, so you have a pretty straightforward case. I think you got a good dog. And he's at a good age to start. Maria will follow up with you.
Sweet.
She'll send you a contract form. She'll send you the make and models that I recommend. And then she'll break down all the pricing and stuff for you. And then handle scheduling and accounting stuff.
Sure.
Once you're confirmed and everything and your invoice is paid, I'll follow up with you and I'll send you an email that'll have 3 videos for you to watch to prep you for the training class.
Okay.
Don't worry about doing anything in the videos, simply watch them.
I see.
Okay, so that when we come to the first lesson, we can just jump right into the training, and we're not wasting 30 minutes like going over like how the e-collar works and stuff.
Right. Oh, I see, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and when you do get your e-collar, I do recommend you read your manual. I do recommend you fiddle with it, turn it on, mess with the buttons.
Right.
The most common thing that can happen is that the dial, it goes in increments of 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 127. Is sometimes you'll get a lemon and the dial will go from like 5 to 35 with the tiniest little movement.
I see.
And you'll see the numbers jump all over the place. Then you want to return it
I see.
and exchange it.
Uh-huh.
So we don't waste the class, because it's happened where the owner shows up and it's not working and you can't use it because it's just all over the place and super inconsistent.
Okay.
Okay? Other than that, that's pretty much it. If you have any questions that you forgot to ask, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, Maria will get in touch with you and then follow up with everything else.
All right. Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you very much.
It was a
Appreciate
pleasure,
your time.
Jason. If you have any other questions, like I said, reach out. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay.